the doctors, all they do is say, here, take Prilosec, here, take Pepto-Bismol, here, take Tums, and so you're taking all these medications, but you're not solving the underlying cause.
Welcome back to the Modern Sage podcast. I'm Leah Guy, your host, and as always, I'm very happy that you're here. The Modern Sage podcast is meant to inform and inspire people to live their best life with healing inspiration. Today, we're taking the conversation to the physical, but before we do that, let me just remind you that you can follow me on social media at Leah Guy Live on Instagram and Facebook to find more information about the podcast, events, inspirational quotes, and more. Of course, you can also visit my website, leahguy.com, for information about my books and events and so forth. Now, today, as I said, we are taking this conversation to the physical because even in our spiritual and emotional lives, the physical is the foundation of who we are. And it's an important part to understand and how it relates to all the different elements of what's going on in our life. And I have with me today David Meine, who with his wife, Carla, have formed several businesses in the holistic health arena. And they have a new book called Eat to Live, Unlocking the Leaky Gut Code. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the leaky gut, then this might be really interesting for you and might help you and assist you on your journey. If you've considered whether you have a leaky gut, then you're sure to learn some really valuable information today. And so let me just go ahead and welcome to the show, David. I'm so glad that you're here.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're here. Now, David's story is interesting because he doesn't just come to this kind of like myself, not just by studying the topic. He has lived through the topic. And I want David to share with us a little bit about his personal experience and uncovering how he learned about leaky gut in his own story, and then what we can all do to protect and better our health and our lives moving forward. So David, tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to realize the importance of leaky gut and what it was doing in your life.
Well, what's interesting, growing up as a child, I had parents that turned me into a sugar addict, which most, probably you and your listeners realize sugar causes inflammation in the body. And so I've been a sugar addict all my life. And in 2015, I got attacked by cancer, got bladder cancer. And in 2015, for 2 years, I fought the battle, had 21 tumors, 3 surgeries. When all of that wasn't working, I finally relented and had 2 rounds of chemo. And so in 2017, I finally got into remission. And then in 2018, I was fortunate to want to have a stem cell procedure. I learned that the ibuprofen that I was taking for all the pain that I had disrupts the stem cells. And so the doctor said I had to be off of those for 30 days, which I didn't know how I was going to do because I was already on Lyrica, Cymbalta, Lortab, lots of painkillers for neuropathy, arthritis, the lingering effects of the cancer. I had brain fog. I just had a multitude of these health issues. And I said, I don't know if I can give this up because I was taking it every single day. And he says, you have to if you want to have this stem cell therapy. And so after 2 months, I was like, oh, when I was meeting with him for a follow-up, I said, I am suffering. The knee's doing better. Can I start on this again in September? And he just looked at me and said, David, I would recommend that you never take NSAIDs again, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive. Well, in July, I came across a doctor that does restorative health. And when I started reading his work, I realized, and my wife realized, that he was saying the exact same thing. Don't take these drugs. And also he was working with all these patients, and his average patient, when they came to him, were taking between 7 to 15 drugs.
Wow.
Right? I was on 10 drugs that I had started since 1999, and the doctors just kept adding drugs and drugs. So then I found out that from all the research and everything I was reading, that I needed to consider if I had a leaky gut.
Mhm.
because a leaky gut will cause inflammation in the body. And in my case, when I finally did some blood work and research, I don't know if you can believe this or not, Leah, but I had 30 food sensitivities like salmon and some dairy and some nuts and different things that were going through my small intestine wall into the bloodstream. Then what happens is, which my wife learned from school because she went to school to become a certified functional nutrition coach. And while she was at school, what she started learning, and I love this analogy, when you have so much inflammation in your body, which is the result of all the food going through the bladder wall that's not supposed to, your immune system, it's kind of like all of the military. You have the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, you have all these, and they go in and they start attacking. And as they continue to attack, it starts compromising your immune system. And that's why I was having, I couldn't even open and close my left hand, my right knee, all the way up and down my spine. I had had 3 back surgeries starting in 2014 up to 2019. And so I was a mess.
Mm.
And so what I started doing, and with my wife's schooling, we went on what's called an elimination protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we took everything out, dairy, all those food sensitivities. We took everything out of the diet. My wife to date, I think, has created 120 recipes that are sugar-free, dairy-free, gluten-free. And I found out that I wasn't celiac, but I was gluten intolerant.
Right.
And it's really tough in the American diet to not eat gluten because it's in everything. And then,
David, before you carry on, I want to just back up just a minute, because you mentioned, so you had bladder cancer, but aside from that, you also had a lot of different inflammation creating pain and arthritic feelings and so forth in your body.
Yes.
Do you think all of that was caused by sugar and your diet in general then? Is that what you're saying? That the leaky gut had already started?
Absolutely. In fact, this leaky gut had started when I was in my 20s because I got diagnosed with Crohn's. I don't know if you're familiar with Crohn's and colitis. So I had always I can remember an 18-year-old being 18 and in the backseat of a car, curled up in a ball because I was in so much pain in my stomach, right? I was always dealing with this stuff. And, the doctors, all they do is say, here, take Prilosec, here, take Pepto-Bismol, here, take Tums, and so you're taking all these medications, but you're not solving the underlying cause.
Yes. And is it true? Because I'm not sure. I've been in the health food world for a long time. Back in the 90s, I was managing health food stores and getting a lot of education information from the supplement companies and the food companies and so forth. And back then we started talking and learning about leaky gut. And I remember that the doctors, traditional doctors, I don't want to say all of them, but most of them did not believe that there was a thing such as leaky gut. They thought that was
Correct.
a woo-woo idea that we all made up in the natural foods industry. So is that still true today? Or is there some credibility amongst the medical world that leaky gut does exist?
So we talk about that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found with doctors is the majority of doctors still don't believe in leaky gut. It takes about 19 years for the medical community to accept these new conditions, and the research has to back it up and everything that's going on. But there is a significant amount of doctors out there. There's a lot of doctors that are becoming functional nutrition doctors.
Right.
Right. And so and my wife, what's great about my wife in that profession is that they are the gap between the doctor and the patient. Because the doctor's job is they look at your symptoms and then their number one go-to is, here, take this prescription to solve it, right? But what we found is that the diet is the underlying cause, and that what you need to do is solve that and figure that out. And so when we go through my first, the first 14, 15 chapters is my health history. And then the end of the book is what we did to solve this problem. And so once we started removing those foods and doing that protocol, I all of a sudden was my wife made me journal because she had what's called a food, mood, poop journal.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought it was normal to have a normal bowel movement was 3 to 5 days.
Mm,
And you're supposed to have them once or twice a day if you're healthy, right?
right.
And so when we did the protocol and we took out all the things that my wife has in her protocol, my pain went away.
Mm,
And it was so fascinating. And then I'll just share one quick story. I was coming back from a fishing trip in 2020. I stopped at what's called a Dairy Queen, and I got my favorite shake. It was a German chocolate shake. And anyway, I didn't tell my wife, but I journaled it. And 2 days later, I was so sick. I was in so much pain. And I told my wife, she says, "Where's your journal?" And I go, "It's over here." So she goes in the journal. It goes the day before, didn't see anything. And then 2 days before, she saw that I'd had that shake. And so, Leah, do you think I've ever had a German chocolate shake since then?
no, but I hope that you've had a rendition that is close enough in taste and pleasure, but not quite the real thing.
For me now, I have given up sugar 100%. I've given up gluten because it's not worth the pain.
It's not worth it. Well, David, something you shared with me earlier is that your whole life you've been very active and you've been a healthy, quote, healthy person. And
Yes.
you thought you had health figured out. And I think that that is true for so many people, and including myself. Similarly to you, I believe I was a sugar addict and still am. I still call myself a sugar addict. Um, and had stomach issues and digestive issues the entirety of my life. There was a time in college, I remember, I think I went over 7 days without a bowel movement and
Oh,
just doubled, your whole body just feels toxic and terrible. But for you, this ended up in kind of a life-threatening situation. So I want the listeners to understand that it can be everything from everyday discomfort to body inflammation, like you're sharing, to other symptoms, which I want to talk about that leaky gut can cause, and eventually to create real, serious problems within your body system. So what are some of the symptoms potentially of leaky gut for those listening that are maybe curious of, I wonder if I have this, maybe something's not right?
well, it's anything that starts from the throat and goes down through the bowels. That's pain, bloating, constipation, arthritis. The thing that's interesting, and I'll make this one last comment. In October of 2020, I worked with doctors for 2 years and I got off every single drug. I am completely drug free. Even this black eye I got last night playing pickleball, I didn't take any ibuprofen. I didn't take any Tylenol because once you get your body healed from this leaky gut, then your body can fight the inflammation because that's what it does. When you get an injury,
Yeah.
it does its job. And so, for me, the key is that in your last podcast that you did, it was a great podcast on change. The hardest thing that people struggle with leaky gut is, like, I have people tell me, I would rather die than give up bread. And they
Wow.
are so miserable. They're in so much pain. They're so inflamed. And, it's really hard to get people to change. In fact, I just went back to school. I'm in school to become a life coach because one of the things that we deal with all our clients is changing the brain to fix the physical pains and the physical things that they struggle with.
Yeah, it is a really big issue. And, for variety of reasons, the addiction goes beyond the physical. I talk all the time about emotional addiction and that sensation and energy of pain that we get into related to our life experiences, our traumas, our negative beliefs, our, difficult feelings that we have. And then we attach to physical addictions as well. And sugar and carbs are one of the biggest culprits. Now, let's be fair because there are healthier carbs, and I don't think everyone has to eliminate everything from their diet to feel good. But the amount of processed foods and things like breads and my favorites, cookies and brownies and cakes, those things don't have hardly any nutritional value, even though dark chocolate has some good elements of nutrition to it. These processed foods and carbs and sugars don't have any nutrition. They almost rob your body of what your body needs. And when talking about the leaky gut, it's kind of that scenario played out in the body, right? The food is being robbed through the lining of your small intestines. Earlier, I think you said bladder wall, but I think that was a mistake, right?
It was. I meant the small intestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when that happens, you can imagine all these little particles floating around your body and
in your bloodstream.
And
Yeah.
causing, in almost any kind of condition that could be related to the blood, right?
Well, you brought up something interesting, and I don't know if you and your readers are aware, but do you know the food industry gets to hide sugar in the food label?
No.
So when you look at the food label and you go down, you see the added sugars, whether it's alcohol sugars or what kind of sugars. Do you know that in the label, they don't have to count the carbohydrates? So when you go down and you look at carbs, there's a formula to really see how much sugar's in that processed food. So you take carbs minus the fiber. So like one of my favorite foods had 30 carbs, 1 gram of fiber. So you minus that and then you divide by 4. Well, I try to stay under 5 grams of sugar total. But when you take the carbs in that instance, you've got a little over 7 grams of sugar that you got to add to if it's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 grams of carb. And all of a sudden you're now at 13, 15 grams of sugar that people don't realize in a serving. Wow. And that's hidden. And that's why I wrote a book in 2014. And in my book I wrote in 2014, I did all the nursing association did a study on sugar. And in 2010, the average American was consuming 130 pounds of sugar. Today, the average American is consuming over 150 pounds of sugar. That is actually robs nutrition from our body because sugar has no nutritional value. And that's why people are so sick. That's why Alzheimer's is on an increase and dementia and all of these diseases is because of all of the sugar that the body can't deal with.
Yeah. And actually, in another podcast I did several weeks ago, I spoke with the doctor about the gut-brain connection.
Yes.
The importance of getting the healthy bacteria in the gut operating in an appropriate way to alleviate things like depression and Alzheimer's. And as you mentioned, like foggy brain and this kind of thing. So we know, and people know, this is information that we sort of know, even if you don't know exactly about leaky gut. We all know that too much sugar is a bad thing for our body. We all know that, healthy vegetables and fruits and proteins and so forth are nutritious for our body. We all know these things, but where is and I know, neither one of us are certified psychologists, but that line, as you said, people would rather die than give up their addiction. People would rather feel miserable every day than sacrifice the pleasure that releases a strong response in the brain. And I get that of, whatever their favorite thing is. And we don't believe that we can have healthy energy and feel great and be vital in our health without, without our treats, without our substances. But you just mentioned you play pickleball. You got a black eye from it. You play pickleball. You're still very active, right?
Yep. I race cycling.
You race cycling. You've recovered from bladder cancer.
Yep.
You've reduced your inflammation in your body.
All my arthritis is gone.
Okay.
My peripheral neuropathy, which was unbelievable pain in my feet, they were on fire. That's in remission. So you got to remember everything I'm saying, cancer, arthritis, the peripheral neuropathy. My kids thought I had dementia. My wife and I have 7 kids. We have 18 grandkids. They just thought, what is wrong with Dad? And all of that's in remission. And if I put any amount of sugar or anything back in my body, those things start coming back. And so that's why with all the brain work I've done, which a lot of your podcasts are about the brain and thinking and loving the addict. The key is that you have to change your thinking, because we all have this story and we get in these loops. And so that's why, coaching's valuable, or reading a book where all of a sudden you go, I need to consider changing. And it's the thinking process that you've got to change, because here I am 4 years and I'm a walking miracle, Leah. And my wife and I, I'm 65, she's 64, and we're in those golden years, right? And we're in those go-go years. But I got a lot of friends that are 65, and they're in no-go years because their health is so bad.
Yeah, I know. And so on the one hand, it's this easy choice. And on the other hand, for many of us, it feels impossible. Now,
Yes.
you said you grew up as a sugar addict as well. So can you imagine when you were maybe 40, even though you were healthy, even though you were out and about and, a healthy, active person, can you imagine then saying, whatever your diet was, that you would go off of all of those foods and not ever have your German chocolate smoothie thing again, and one day be eating this clean and feeling this good? Would you have been able to imagine
No.
that then?
Well, my wife and I talk about it all the time. We were serious triathletes from 44 to 50 years old. I did 42 Olympic distance races all over the United States. I did Ironman. I did all, and that doesn't include all the sprint races. And my wife actually qualified for Worlds, and we went to New Zealand and she raced at Worlds. And we always talk about now, with the way that we eat now and our focus on having optimal health, not only do we want to have optimal health, but we want to live longer with optimal health. What kind of athletes would we have been in our 40s? And then we took up tennis and played in nationals. And my wife played on a national team that won the 3-0 for women for the whole United States. And we just talked about now, what would we been like then?
Right.
It's incredible to think about.
Yeah, it is. And so again, just to kind of narrow it down about leaky gut. So you've mentioned arthritis, you've mentioned constipation, you've mentioned inflammation in your entire body, bladder cancer, the peripheral
brain fog.
The brain fog is a huge one for people. And there's a list of other conditions that I think people might experience. Now, I know that in your book, Eat to Live,
Eating to Live, by the way.
Eating to Live.
Yeah, there's a doctor that wrote a book,
I know,
Eat to Live.
I know Furman. He's a friend of mine,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So sorry, Dr. Furman. Eating to Live. I know you mentioned some of this in your book, but go ahead and give us some examples today, if you don't mind, of not just what you eat, but what could potentially heal or help to heal leaky gut for a person who's maybe in a crisis situation right now. What's something that they can do or take? Are there supplements maybe that would help heal the leaky gut?
So here's the thing that's interesting. When that first 6 months after I learned about leaky gut, I started taking probiotics and prebiotics. They don't work because your gut is really in bad shape. And so what you have to learn, the reason an elimination protocol is so important, unless you can afford to do the blood work that will tell you what's going through the gut wall, which is very expensive. I use Dr. Tom O'Brien, Dr. Stephen Gundry are two doctors we worked with extensively to figure out, but we did the elimination protocol. And so if you take out the known culprits are dairy, gluten, sugar, nuts, and the meats. And so if you take those out, we don't charge anything hardly at all for our elimination protocol. But if you go 4 to 6 weeks on our protocol and you take those things out, we've got unbelievable stories from clients that have followed it, and their AC1 scores go down, their inflammation goes down, they're getting off their medications, and and like I was telling you in our before we started, we owned a company. We helped tens of thousands of women and men lose 50 to 200 pounds. I mean, I had women lose me because I'm 180 pounds, right? And the thing that was interesting is that, but they weren't healthy, because what that 1800 for a woman or 1700, carbs, or excuse me, calories that they eat, it's the quality of the calories. I used to have women, before they'd have one bite of food, would drink 2,500 calories in sugar with their favorite beverages,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so the key is with the leaky gut is if you do journaling, so like you can do a paper journal. We created an app called More Than Healthy, where people can track the food, track their bowel movements, track the pain, and all of a sudden they get these correlations where their brain goes, oh, when I eat this, I've got pain in my stomach, I've got gas, and I'm constipated, right? Because there's this scale that you look at. And so the thing that's amazing is that if they even start that, in 4 to 6 weeks, everyone comes back to us and goes, I cannot believe how much better I feel. But the challenge, as you know, Leah, in the health industry, is sustaining that.
Yes.
When you go out to eat, you go to a family dinner, you go to a friend's thing, and you got a table full of sugar, right? Or things that your body reacts to because of your leaky gut. You go home and you're miserable, but you go take your Prilosec, your Pepto-Bismol, your Tums, and kind of cover it up. But, you've got this underlying problem. When you hit your 40s and 50s and 60s, what you can get away in your teens and 20s and 30s, and what you eat and what you do, the body can deal with it. But then you hit 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then you have these unbelievable health crises. And I can tell you, the majority of the doctors we work with, and functional medicine doctors and functional coaches like my wife, it all comes back to the diet. It all comes back to what we're abusing our bodies with.
Well, so you mentioned 5 pretty large things, and some people, like the dairy and the gluten and the sugars and so forth, some people would say, what do I eat?
Oh, I eat unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can go to any restaurant with anybody and find something on that I can eat.
So give us an example of your breakfast, for example.
So I do intermittent fasting. And we've been doing it for multiple years. And so we don't eat until 11 o'clock, and then we try to be done at 5:30. And so we just eat in that time period. And we do that for sleep. The foundation of health is sleep. And so if you're drinking and eating after 6 o'clock, your sleep scores go down dramatically. In fact, see this ring? It's called an Aura ring. It's got all these computer chips. It tracks everything, because the foundation is a good sleep. So it doesn't matter all the things that you do. If you don't get that foundation of sleep, it doesn't matter. Everything else won't work.
Right.
But say your sleep's good and you're doing you're doing these things, it's so critical that you just, when you go to a restaurant, I'll get a salad. I went vegetarian for a couple of years thinking that was the way to go. But we worked with Dr. Terry Wall, and she actually put meat back in because she was a vegan, and got her health condition completely changed. She's got a great book. But the key is that people have to understand, as they're going through this process, it's just important to realize that just to make little changes, right? And so, if you go all in, your body's just going to fight you, right? And so you just make little changes, and maybe just cut out and just drink water for a while. Like we, on our website, morethanhealthy.com, we do a video log every week. So we do a live video feed, and we take a topic, and it could be water, it could be intermittent fasting, it could be whatever. So to answer your question is, I pretty much only drink water all day to get my 90 ounces of water. But then for like lunch, we use sugar substitutes. Right. So if we're going to do a brunch, we'll do these gluten-free pancakes with blueberries. And then I eat half an avocado before, because when I put the maple syrup on, we've done a lot of research on how it spikes your blood sugar. And so if you eat the avocado before, then your blood sugar doesn't spike. And then I'll have some bacon. and I'll have that for a meal, or we'll create lots of vegetables. We'll roast broccoli, we'll roast cauliflower. I only do between 4 to 6 ounces of meat a day, and it's it's grain free, it's gluten free, it's grass fed. And so we're really specific on what we eat to be clean, but we'll have a salad and we'll do really healthy smoothies and put in, the greens and some fruit and that's kind of, but my wife's created 120 recipes on our website that are dairy free, gluten free, sugar free. So if people are looking for great meals, simple, she's created them.
Yeah. So that's interesting because and it is the mindset, because I also am gluten-free and dairy-free for years now, and mostly soy-free too. And I can't do quinoa. There's a few things that I can't do, but my family or people in the world say, well, what do you eat? And it's so interesting because you can eat so much. In fact,
Yes.
you can eat the majority of foods. It's just that the
Yes.
mindset is so focused on having the things that give us that hit or that charge or that
Right.
addiction feeling, right? So there's so many things to eat, and you're eating real food. I mean, sometimes,
Yep.
I need to pull back on my cookies again, because when I do that, literally, and now I'm going through the change in my life and so forth, but the bloating
Yes.
that I experience, and I know that I'm not the only one, or just, as you said, the lack of sleep or the back pain, or all these different little symptoms that can be easily resolved by cleaning up our diet. Now, I don't want to say that
Yes.
that's the only thing to do in the world in order for us to have wonderful, perfect health. But for the majority of people, that is a large percentage of feeling good, having energy, and eliminating a lot of these discomforts to diseases in our life. Now, I want to go back to leaky gut specifically. And I want you to explain for us as simply as you can how it starts, because I know we heard you say, I was a sugar addict, and the carbs and all these things that can irritate the lining if you have leaky gut. But how does it start in the first place?
So in functional medicine, functional nutrition, what they talk about, and it's a perfect example. So the lining of your small intestine, if you thought of it as a shag carpet, so you have these fingers, right? This villa that's inside your small intestine. And what happens is with our diets and with the things that we're doing, we're shaving that shag carpet and it's getting all the way down to a Berber.
Mm.
That's a good analogy. And then what happens is you get these openings that are not supposed to be in that, and these food particles that you're allergic to or have a sensitivity to. In my case, we ate salmon every week, a couple times a week, for the omega-3s. Well, for me in particular, that's a food sensitivity that was going through the small intestine into the bloodstream. Here's the crazy thing. My wife, we ate a lot of spinach. Well, she has a food sensitivity to spinach. And the thing that's great about functional nutrition is that they teach that no person is the same. There is not a pill that works for everybody because of all of our different genetics and the different environments that we live in. And so that's why you have to understand that each person is unique. And that's why the journaling and researching ourselves is so critical,
Yeah.
because once you get that down, now the great news is if you get clean, that will grow back. That can heal. Now, I'm a severe case, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here I am after being on this path for 4 years, and I have unbelievable health.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to note. So not everyone is the same. And so the five big
No.
ones that you mentioned, like the dairy and the gluten and the nuts and the meats and so forth, that might not be true. Those are the aggressive kind of, or I guess the
Yep.
culprits.
Those are the biggest culprits.
Yes, right. So that might be a good place to start. But it's important, as you're saying, for people to understand for them what if they believe that leaky gut may be part of the problem, or if they just want to heal, and take really good care of their gut situation, their gut health, that you have to really determine what are the specific food factors for you that are causing digestive issues, right? So this doesn't, I guess what I want to say is this doesn't have to happen to everybody. Some people, I would assume, don't have many food sensitivities growing up. Maybe they, they had a very balanced, healthy diet their whole life, and maybe they don't have all these food sensitivities, which means they probably wouldn't have leaky gut in the future. Other people who've taken a lifetime of antibiotics or medicines
Yep.
or OD'd on sugar or didn't have a lot of the micronutrients or what have you, they may have more of a risk factor for leaky gut.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I remember back in the day, as I said, at the health food stores, in addition to the elimination diet, which I know is critical, this is the first step in understanding what's going on in your body system. Aren't there, I remember, is it marshmallow root? Aren't there some herbs that can help to soothe the lining of the digestive tract or the small intestine and so forth?
Yeah.
Aren't there supplements like that people can take in addition to?
Yes, they can go to those stores and they can find the soothing, but the thing that you're saying is it will soothe, but you're not solving the problem.
Right. It won't heal it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what you shared with us, for you do intermittent fasting and you eat a variety of foods that include a small amount of animal protein, gluten-free, carbs, and fruits and vegetables,
And really knocked out the processed foods.
Now,
like there's certain restaurants I won't eat at all because there's nothing there that I can eat, right? Because of, the fast food, but most restaurants, and there are some fast foods that have really good salads and have, really good meat. So you have to kind of research before you go to a place and, and see if they've got, good things on it.
Well, since you've been on your healing path, and I know that this isn't probably standard practice, but are you able to now include some of the foods that were culprits for you in your past?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we finally got to the point where we just went and paid the money, we worked with Dr. Tom O'Brien and did what's called Zoomers. So I found out in July of 2020, I had 30 food sensitivities. Then May of 2021, I was down to 16.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to add cashews back in. There's lots of things I was able to add back in. And I've just ordered my kit again. So I'll do the blood work again. And I'm hoping, as good as I feel, that a bunch more of those have gone away and I'm healed and, I can add more things back in my diet.
Yeah. And that's because you went through this process and you allowed the shag carpet to regrow.
The vila to grow back up to a shag carpet.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's encouraging. And so you don't have concerns, or maybe you do, but you can tell me, do you have concerns about any other of arthritis returning or the cancer returning or anything like that? And are you going to the restroom more frequently?
So I have a bowel movement once or twice a day. What's interesting is babies basically eat and have a bowel movement, and that's the ultimate perfect system, right? And as adults, we should every day, have one. And if you're really healthy, you basically have one with every meal, which is what I do. And, I can't believe I used to go 3 to 7 days, before I had a bowel movement, and no doctor. And I'm not dishing doctors. Doctors are amazing. I'm so grateful for them. But, they don't do anything about our diet, and when you keep adding medications, like I was having interactions, and it's just amazing. There's, one of the things that blew my wife and I away, I hope I can share this on your show, but in my 50s, I got ED. And with what's happened the last 4 years, I'm like a teenager.
Oh, wow.
And it's been unbelievable. And so, I don't have to take a pill for my wife and I to have intimacy. And it's all been done through diet and getting off all the medications. It's been just so amazing, for that part of our life also.
That is amazing. Do you take, in general, do you take like anti-inflammatory herbs like turmeric or any of those kinds of things? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So we've worked with these doctors, functional medicine doctors. we've worked on, okay, what am I missing in my diet? There's a really great doctor, Dr. Purser, that does this blood work on a CMA to show every single mineral, every single vitamin, to see where you're at. And so I take very specific supplements like turmeric every day, omega-3s, I take a potassium, I take a B12, you know, and I've added those in, and then I do the blood work like vitamin D. So my wife and I got COVID twice since March of 2020. And both times for us, for my wife, it was like a cold. For me, it was just like a flu. And because I'd gotten all that inflammation and done all that work, you know, it was no big deal for us.
Mhm.
And so what you do is I was able to build back my immune system to do its job, because we're always, I don't know if you've done the research or read, but at any given time, you know, the human body, we've dealt with 42 different viruses,
Yes. Right.
right?
Yeah.
That
Viruses
we've
are part
overcome.
of life. Yeah.
Yes.
They're part of life. We need them actually to
Yes.
enhance and increase our immune system, but we need
Yes.
to be able to deal with them when they come. Yeah.
It's so true.
So I know you were healthy before and very active, but for people who are struggling with weight issues, for example, have you, through the protocol and cleaning up your gut and so forth, have you lost weight as well?
You know, it's so interesting. I was about 205, 210. I'm 6 foot tall, you know, athletic. And since in the last 4 years, I now sit at 177 pounds, and I was not trying to lose weight. And I weigh now what I weighed in high school. And I was, you know, a football player, track star, basketball, you know, all the sports. And so it's amazing. I've, you know, pickleball, you know, my wife and I win gold medals all the time. Cycling, you know, I win overall for my age group. I win, you know, last race, I won two gold medals and a bronze. And, you know, when you think about, you know, that 30 plus pounds, think about what it does to your knees and your joints and your hips and everything in your body. And you lose all of that. And it's just amazing how you feel, how you look, and then how you can participate. I can run up and down stairs now. I've got 18 grandkids that I'm doing sporting events and doing things. I'm an avid fisherman and I take them fishing, and I'm, you know, doing all this stuff. And I've got all my 65-year-old friends that can't do anything.
Yeah. And you've overcome bladder cancer, which is
Yeah.
no
I'm in
small-
remission.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So, you know, of course, we want to be cautious with people around weight, because again, it's not for me or you or anyone to say how much a person should weigh. But I think that general feeling of fitness with energy and
Yes.
strength, you know,
Yes.
and so what we hear and why you're so inspiring is that although you are, you know, back to your high school weight, and although you've lost 25 pounds or so, that you are still, you're at the top of your game as far as your fitness level and your strength and your energy, right? And that's what's so critical.
Can I share one last thing?
Of course.
The foundation of health is you got to find a why. You got to find a really strong why. And what happened to me through this whole process to find my why, my long-term why, is my wife and I got married at 40. She was 44. I was 45. And unfortunately, we both had gone through a divorce. And so we blended these two families together. And we've been married 20 years now. And my number one why is at 95 years old, I want to celebrate our 50th anniversary, and I want to be lucid. We love to dance, and I want to be able to get out on the dance floor with my wife, in front of our family, in front of our friends. And that's my goal. I want, you know, I hear a lot of people talk about they're getting older, right? And they accept arthritis and the brain and all the things that go with it, you know. And my thing is I want to live longer with optimal health, so I can enjoy my family, I can enjoy my wife, I can enjoy things. 95, I want to live to 110. You know, Tony Robbins just came out with a great book called Life Force. We read all these amazing books and technology that's helping us live longer with way much better health and to do better than what our parents and their ancestors did.
Yeah. Well, that's the key, is not just to live longer, but to live a full, healthy life, as you
Yep.
said, optimal. And I think that's beautiful. So what you're basically saying is you want to experience more love, and love is what your driving factor. You want
Yep.
to have that in your life and be there to experience that. And that's really beautiful. I thank you for sharing that. For anyone who's listening and interested in this topic and wants to learn more, all of David's information will be in our show notes, including links and so forth. And you can reach out to him directly. And just to take the power into your own hands. And again, we're grateful and it's awe-inspiring what our medical field has been able to achieve and do. And also there's room for growth and information education with our diets, our supplements, and how to really fine-tune our body machines and care for them appropriately. So David, I thank you for sharing your story, and I applaud you for the commitment that you have to your health. And not only to your health, but how you and your wife for years have been creating businesses and platforms and different things to help other people discover and learn more about their life and their health. And that just helps all of us. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for all listening. This is Leah Guy with the Modern Sage Podcast. Please give us a like, a rating, a review, follow us on social media, visit my website, and we will tune in with you again next week.